Hey guys, welcome back to another Genshin Impact video, and for today I wanted to make you a guide on equipment and artifacts. So this is going to be a live commentary guide. I've only done post commentary for all of the guide videos I had this far, but I wanted to try a live commentary one, just might be a little bit better depending on how you guys think it turns out. Alright, anyways, if you prefer live commentary guides, let me know in the comment section below, or if you prefer I go back to post narration, then feel free to alert me on that as well. I know that a lot of people have already made guides on weapons and artifacts, but what I wanted to do is cover something a little bit more general. So essentially I'm not going to be making a video on like what the best weapon or artifact is for each unit, although I will be using them as examples. I'm just going to help you get a better understanding of how equipment works in this game, how artifacts work in this game, what should you spend your resources and time on, and most importantly, what are some traps that you want to avoid. So if you enjoy, please be sure to leave a like at the end of this video when you're done watching, and let's get into it. Really quickly, before we even get started on weapons or artifacts, I want you to get acquainted with each character's unique stat that increases as you continue to ascend them. For example, Keqing has crit damage, so every time she upgrades to another ascension phase, she will increase in critical damage. And if we look at, let's say, Venti, for him, he increases in energy recharge. For Diluc, he gets a boost in crit rate. For Barbara, she gets a boost in HP. I still have to level her up to 80, but she does get also a boost to max HP. Every character has their own specific increase. Once again, Razor, he gets physical damage bonus, which is why a lot of people go physical damage builds on him. So it's important to know each character's main unique stat that increases whenever you ascend with them, because that actually largely affects how you want to build them in terms of the weapon type as well as artifacts. Not to mention just their main attributes and their main contributions in combat, because if you are a physical damage dealer, or if you're a main DPS, or if you're an elemental damage dealer, so let's say someone like Diluc, or rather let's say Razor. Razor would be mostly a physical damage dealer, while someone like Klee is an elemental damage dealer. So let's go into weapon types. There are 5 weapon types. There's a sword, a greatsword or a claymore, then there's a catalyst or a tome, which is responsible for all magic units, then there's bow, and then lastly there is spear or pole arm, which is currently Xiangling is the only one to have one, but when we get Zhongli, then he will also be another spear user. So the basic stats for every single weapon comes with attack, and then it also comes with a secondary stat. Bear in mind that there is no universal stat scaling for the primary attribute in terms of attack. A sword will not always have 449 attack at level 80. Some of them may come with higher or lower attributes, so it depends on one weapon to another. It's not a uniform constant. But generally speaking, the attack usually is much higher on, for example, great swords than they are on regular swords, mostly just because great swords have a slower attack speed. And of course, the rarity of that weapon affects most of its base stats. As to the passive, it largely depends on the weapon itself. Sometimes you might have a 3-star weapon with a very fantastic passive, or a 5-star weapon with a relatively crappy passive. Of course, your main objective is to get a 5-star weapon that has a good passive. Anyways, similar to how you would level up a character, there are materials that you would have to use to enhance that weapon. So if we go over to the inventory screen, mostly just because I have a lot of max weapons, the way to enhance a weapon is either to use other weapons or to gain enhancement ores, and these can be obtained from chests, from quests. You can forge them if you go to either the blacksmith in Mondstadt or the blacksmith in Liyue. They cost crystal chunks, white iron chunks, and iron chunks based on the rarity. So the 1-star one will be iron, the 2-star one will be white iron, and the 3-star one will be crystal. These also are very common to find among, let's say, the Battle Pass, because the Battle Pass offers you a lot of enhancement ores for upgrading your weapons. And they're pretty plentiful to come along. It's just mostly dependent on whether or not you are very sparing with your resources. For example, a main mistake that a lot of players make is that they carelessly upgrade a lot of items at a time. And while the game doesn't punish you too hard for upgrading too many items, it also does become increasingly more difficult the higher you go, because once you start reaching the level 60s, the 70s, the 80s, that's when it becomes very expensive to use these, and so therefore you always want to have a good supply available. There's nothing wrong with enhancing 3-star weapons, but generally speaking, stick to only enhancing 4 and 5 stars. For those of you who are also AR 30, 35, 40, you may have made this mistake already, and It's not the end of the world, it just means that you might have to wait a little bit longer to get a specific weapon to a higher level. You just have to keep farming this, and once again, best way to do so is to either forge them or from random event rewards. In which case, I would actually argue that Gnostic Hymn is worth purchasing because while all of these items are accessible, if you were already planning to spend money on the game, I actually think it's just better to spend 20 bucks to get guaranteed valuable items as opposed to maybe a couple 3-star items and a 4-star unit from gacha. Aside from that, Ascension is very similar to how you would ascend a character. First, you have the Ascension material, which in the character's case it would be the elemental crystals or the boss drop. In the weapon's case, it would be a weapon Ascension material. And depending on the time of day, I'll put a graphic up on the screen. You've probably saw it if you watch my other videos. Depending on the time of day, you will have a different artifact. Not artifact material, you just have a different material to use from. So keep in mind what day you need to farm that specific material, because if, let's say you're working on perhaps a wolf's gravestone, then in that case, they use the fetters or the chains or handcuffs, whatever you want to call them. Actually, I'm pretty sure these are light bracelets, but anyways. So then always know that, let's say if your wolf's gravestone is ready to ascend, farm on Wednesday or Saturday. It is not recommended to farm Ascension materials on Sunday because that's when all of them are available. In other words, your chances of getting the one that you want in particular are very low because there's a chance that you can get any of them. So I would not recommend that. Aside from that, there's also the general monster drop, which is usually either, in this case, let's say the Black Sword, it would be the Leyline Sprout from the Abyss Mages, or for Wolf's Gravestone, it's the Chaos Cores. If we were to go over to the Favonius Warbow, it would also be Chaos Cores. The second drop is usually a very high level drop from either a mini boss or like the Fatui agents, things like that. And then the third drop would be a regular mob. Whopper Flowers, Hilichurls, even the little shamans and such. So it's important to farm these a lot because the boss materials are used for ascending your weapons, whereas the smaller materials are used for ascending characters as well as ascending your weapons. So you're going to want to make sure you farm up a ton of these as much as you can every day. It's not one of those things that you lose sleep over if you miss a day, but generally speaking, if you have free time, go around and do all of the bosses that you can do. And the easy way to do that is just to open up your adventure handbook, go to bosses, and they will mark you all of the places where you can farm, let's say the Ruin Guards, or the Minichurls, even the Whopper Flowers, as well as the Abyss Mages. Now onto the actual weapons themselves. As opposed to constellations when you get duplicate units, weapons you can refine them if you get duplicate weapons. And that usually increases the potency of whatever their passive is. And you can usually figure out what numbers are affected because they'll be highlighted in blue. So if I have a Refinement Rank 2 Black Sword, if I go over to Refine right here, it'll increase it from 20 and 60 to 25% and 70%. This is extremely significant for bigger weapons like the Wolf's Gravestone because Wolf's Gravestone actually has two passes. It has a passive of increasing attack just flat, and then another one where it increases even more attack if you are attacking a unit that's very weak. And since both of these numbers scale, it goes from 60% total to 75%. And that's just from one refinement to another. At max refinement, I'm pretty sure Wolf's Gravestone goes to a base attack increase of 40% with a bonus increase of 80%. So you go from 60% total to 120%. So getting dupes for weapons is very significant. Some people are wondering like if it's better to have multiple copies, of the same weapon, just in case you have multiple units that would want it. For example, if I have multiple units that would want a Favonius Greatsword, it largely depends on whether or not you want to spread your resources among a lot of characters or specialize in only a few. Personally, if I got a second Wolf's Gravestone and if there's another Greatsword user I really would want to use, I would probably just stick to refining one, and then if I needed to switch from, let's say, Diluc to Chongyun, I would use Wolf's Gravestone. I would just give the sword over to him. Although, again, some units have a different synergy to certain weapons. A lot of people would see Wolf's Gravestone, see it's a huge amount of attack, it's a huge amount of percent attack, and then even more percent attack after that. Percent attack is good, but some units benefit a lot more from other items. For example, to my knowledge, Skyward Pride is actually much better for Chongyun because he really needs the energy recharge. Or, let's say if we were to look at Keqing, the best sword for her currently is colloquially agreed upon to be the Black Sword because since she's a crit damage user due to her personal unique stat, as I mentioned before, upping her crit rate is the best thing you could do for her, and the Black Sword is the current sword that has that much crit rate. There's been a debate as to whether or not the Flute and Lion's Roar are good for it because both of them provide percent attack. But in the end, especially if you're going for min-maxing, critical damage is her best stat, and so therefore you want to go with crit rate to supplement that. It's one of those things where you kind of have to, like, as you play the game more and more, you get more adjusted to what each character can or can't do. For Diluc, some people have also opted to try going for crit damage on him because he has a crit rate passive, but great swords are mostly focused on either just pure power or even energy recharge. For example, the two best weapons on him right now are Prototype Amanus and Wolf's Gravestone. And I think that's largely because of the fact that because greatswords had so much base attack, that percent attack works the best on them, versus a percent attack on a bow or a catalyst, not so much, because even for the Amos bow, for example, if you have the Amos bow, it gives a lot of attack and a lot of percent attack. Bow users at the current moment aren't really DPS, although that is bound to change if we get Chilled, and I'm pretty sure Chilled is a primary DPS unit anyway. That's also specifically why Venti uses the Favonius Warbow, because it gives a lot of energy recharge and also the passive generating even more elemental recharge. So with Venti, because his attribute of choice is energy recharge, the way you want to itemize him is purely to spam his elemental burst, which is the giant tornado, whirlwind, black hole thing that he summons out. Similar to Barbara. For her, she's a healer primarily and a support secondary, so Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers works the best on her because it gives a lot of percent HP. More importantly, the Refinement rank at rank 5 makes it so that whenever she switches to your primary DPS, they get a huge burst of attack. So if you combine this, let's say 48%, with Diluc's Wolf's Gravestone, if let's just assume it was max Refinement, that would be a bonus of 168% attack. That's a lot of bonus attack you can put on a unit. So don't always just go for whatever gives base attack and attack. Always make sure you take a look at whatever each character requires to make the most efficiency out of their personal stat and their abilities. Again, I'm using mostly hypotheticals, but I just want to teach you the parts of the game that you want to start getting a better understanding of, so that way in the future when newer units come out, you could take the same knowledge and apply it towards any character, no matter what class they may be, no matter what role they fill, things like that. So with Barbara, once again, her passive is that, or her benefit is that her healing ability scales off of her max HP. So building her full tank HP is the best way to go, instead of going percent attack. And therefore, going for the percent HP on her weapons as well as her artifacts make a lot more sense than if you were to go, let's say, percent attack, because she's not an attacker. By the way, if you're still unsure about what weapon is best for what character, there's a link down in the video description. There's going to be a whole bunch of links, just like every other guide, that will tell you the best weapons for each character. But generally speaking, while it's important to reference guides and stuff like that, it's also important to figure this stuff out on your own, because you don't want to have to constantly rely on waiting for people to release information, and during that time you have absolutely no idea what you're doing. So the more you figure this stuff out for yourself, the better it is. And again, just to recap, the best way to do so is to first figure out what their unique stat is, and second, figure out what they use the most out of their talents. So for someone like Razor, he's an electro unit and he does electro damage. However, his attack speed increases drastically whenever he's using his ultimate or his elemental burst. And so therefore physical damage makes a lot more sense. Not only that, you can figure that out by checking that he gets a physical damage bonus. So people will build massive amounts of physical damage on him. And for Kuching, she has crit damage. So therefore a weapon that gives her more critical hit rate would make a lot more sense. And that also transitions to artifacts, which will be the next part of the video. Okay, so without rambling too much, because I know this video is going to be noticeably longer than if I were to do it in a post commentary, I'll try to make this part quick. Artifacts are arguably more important than the weapon itself, in my opinion. And not in the sense that they have a larger impact, but I feel like this is where a lot of people get confused. This is where a lot of people fall into pitfalls, and I myself have been a victim of such. So I'll do my best to explain this as quickly as possible without necessarily leaving out any important details. So once again, there are 5 pieces to artifacts. There's the flower piece, the feather piece, the time piece, the cup piece, or I guess just your cup, and then the head piece. The flower piece always carries a base attribute of HP, flat HP, no matter what. As for the feather always carries a base attribute of attack. As to the timepiece, it will carry either percent HP, percent defense, percent attack, elemental mastery, or energy recharge. So this is going to be mostly either a DPS artifact, or it could even be a supportive artifact. As for the cup piece, or the cup, I'll just call it the cup, it provides the exact same attributes as the timepiece, with the exception of instead of energy recharge, it provides you physical damage bonus and elemental damage bonus percent. So if we look over here, for example, when you try to find one, there's a physical damage bonus right here, or a hydro damage bonus right here. And this only applies to the cup. And since the elemental damage bonus percents apply individually and not universally, that means there's a chance that you will get Electro, there's a chance that you'll get a Hydro, and it often runs into instances where you get the wrong damage bonus on the wrong set. For example, Thundering Fury is meant specifically for Electro units, but you get Geo damage. So Cup will be your most annoying artifact to max out, or just to get, because there's just so many different stats that you can get for the base stat, and so therefore, you're going to have your work cut out for you. Lastly, we have the headpiece, which is HP percent, defense percent, attack percent, elemental mastery, but unlike the timepiece and the cup, the headpiece provides you crit rate, crit damage, and healing bonus percent. So in this instance, it's important to understand the different attributes you would get for the latter three. The first two are always going to be HP and attack, but the latter three can change depending on whatever unit you're going for. For example, with Kuching, because she's a crit-based unit, having a crit artifact would be probably more beneficial for her than an attack artifact. Similarly, if you were to go on a unit that had a lot of elemental damage, let's say perhaps Klee, which I guess I can go to for now, because I have her, then Pyro damage bonus will work best on her because she consistently does Pyro damage. She wouldn't benefit much from physical damage, and while she would benefit from attack does have diminishing returns as time goes on. Alright, next we have the substats, and the substats will always be from this list. Flat HP, flat attack, flat defense, percent HP, percent attack, percent defense, elemental mastery, energy recharge, crit rate, percent crit damage, percent healing bonus percent. So essentially, the substats can be any of the base stats, with the exception of, I believe, elemental damage bonus percent and physical damage bonus percent. So everything else can come into the secondary attributes. Now, this is the part where some people have been getting quite confused on. What attributes do you want? What substats are you looking for? Again, it largely depends on the character. If the character is a DPS unit, if they're a support unit, if the character uses crit damage, if the character uses percent attack, maybe elemental mastery, energy recharge. So for Kuching, because she's a crit rate unit or crit damage unit, these two stats are the best for her. And then, because percent attack just works generally for any DPS unit, you would want to go for, ideally, if you can get extremely lucky, crit damage, crit rate, flat attack, percent attack. Of course, elemental mastery and energy recharge are also technically DPS stats as well. They're just a lot more situational and you want to cover as much ground as possible. So if you get any combination of, usually on a DPS unit, if it's attack, percent attack, crit rate, crit damage, elemental mastery, and energy recharge, you're set. So currently she's using the Berserker set because I'm trying to go for crit rate. I understand this flower is not very good, even though it has 4 of the 6 stats that I mentioned. I would rather have this been percent attack. Also, it's a 4-star artifact. But if you look at this one, this is crit rate, crit damage, attack percent, and attack. This is like the perfect list of substats that you would want on a DPS unit that is centered around doing critical damage. Not to mention it's also for a good set for her because of Thundering Fury. And so I'll go into the artifact set a little bit before I continue with the substats. The artifact set is also very important for the unit in question because it ties in with the rest of their kit. So let's say for Kuching, because she's a very electro-heavy attacker, you can build her physical damage but not nearly as effective as if you were to build Razor physical damage. Kuching is primarily electro damage, and she's also a very crit-oriented attacker. So Thundering Fury is a very good set for her because you get bonuses of electro damage as well as bonuses with any elemental reaction that resonates with the electro affinity. But another good example would also be the Thunder Soother, which is electro resistance, not so important for her, but the second one is that it increases overall damage against enemies affected by electro, which is, for her, almost all the time because she's almost always doing electro damage. But if we were to, let's say, go to Barbara, who is a very healing focused character, the Maiden bonus would work best on her because, for example, the 2-piece set gives character healing effectiveness, and the 4-piece says using an elemental skill or burst increases healing received by all party members. This is perfect for her. She's primarily a healer. She does very little outside of just healing and maybe buffing your teammates a little bit. So that's why you want to primarily focus on going for healing stats. And because Barbara is a healing unit that scales off of her max health, then you want to go for percent HP and flat HP as much as you can. Just a quick note, your primary stat will never echo into your secondary stat, except for, I believe, no actually I don't think it even affects the feather as well. I'm pretty sure you can't get flat attack on the feather. I'm just trying to correct myself if I'm wrong here. No, I'm pretty sure you can't. So whatever the primary stat is, it will not be echoed into the secondary stat, or the substats. So since all the flowers have HP, flat HP, they will not have flat HP in the substat. Since all flowers have flat attack, they will not have flat attack in the substat. And so on and so forth. But of course, because the primary stat upgrades much more frequently and to higher intensities, it's generally better to get the stat that you want most specifically on your main stat, and then the substats will just be icing on the cake. Just a few more examples of artifact sets, because again, I'm trying to exercise you on figuring out what sets are good for what characters based on their specific attributes. Let's look at Venti. Since Venti is a very Anemo-focused unit, he's all about Anemo, he's literally and because he's also always about spamming his ultimate or his elemental burst. The Viridescent Veneer, I'm pretty sure Venerer or Veneer, that set is best on him because it increases Anemo damage bonus, and it also offers a breaker status of decreasing the opponent's elemental resistance to whatever element is infused in Swirl, which could either be Hydro, Cryo, Electro, or Pyro. So this works best on him because while Venti could do a little bit of DPS, his skills have generally high cooldowns, and so therefore he's not very consistent when it comes to doing elemental damage, and Anemo by nature is a support attribute, so this works best on him. For someone like Diluc who uses crit rate, and he's a pyro damage user, you might want to go for percent attack because again, great swords have very high base attack. A lot of people say that the Gladiator set is generally the best all-purpose attack set for any DPS unit, and I have to agree, but again, it largely depends on what that character most specializes in. For Keqing, she can also benefit from the Gladiator set as well. I just don't have good artifacts, by the way, that's why I'm using these. But for her, the either 4-piece Thunder Soother or a 2-piece Gladiator and a 2-piece Thunder Fury. In that sense, you might want to reference some more material because we're still kind of labbing stuff out because the game is still very young. We don't have a firm grasp on what is super effective or super efficient. We have ideas on what might be the most efficient stats based on a lot of trial and error, a lot of personal testing, but because there's no like dummy room, you know, like in other MMOs you could do DPS tests in, let's say by spawning a target dummy or going to like a training dojo somewhere, this game doesn't have one, so we have to sort of figure it out based on incomplete information and extrapolate what we know and what we don't know, and then we can draw a conclusion based on that. But usually, when in doubt, stick to sets that complement the character's overall, again, passive stat. So if, let's say for Diluc, the Berserker set is not actually that bad on him because while it only goes up to 4 stars and obviously you want to get 5-star artifacts, it's a good placeholder because Diluc, the more crit he has, the more crit damage he can do. Now, let's go to upgrading artifacts, and I believe that is going to be the last part of this video, so I apologize if it goes long. This is the first time I did a live commentary video in a while, especially guide. So if this goes super long, I apologize, and if you can leave any feedback for me, any criticisms, you can be as harsh as you want, I'll try to take it in stride, but yeah. If you think there's a way I can explain things more efficiently, let me know in the comment section below, I'd greatly appreciate it. Okay, so upgrading artifacts. Now, unlike weapons and characters who have their specific upgrading materials, like with Barbara she can use books, like with characters you can use books, with weapons you can use the enhancement ores, artifacts, the only way to enhance them is with other artifacts. So this is the most, I guess, difficult set of equipment to upgrade because there's so little of supply since there's no like universal experience item for artifacts. And so therefore it's in your best interest to save as many artifacts as possible. That's not to say that you can't enhance 3 stars or you can't enhance 4 stars. You definitely can. But especially once you start hitting Adventure Rank 30, Adventure Rank 35, Adventure Rank 40, 45, it'll get very expensive to enhance 5-star artifacts, especially to +20. Artifacts go to a max level based on what rarity they are. At 1 star it only goes up to 4, at 2 stars it goes up to 8, at 3 stars it goes up to level 12, at 4 stars it goes up to level 16, and finally it goes up to 20 at 5 stars. Again, links will be available in the video description down below if you're still confused about all the metrics to this. So let's look at, let's say, this artifact for example. And it's not great, only has 2 stats that are of, meaningful worth, and defense kind of sucks on Diluc, but I'm mostly just using it to fill the gladiator piece. But let's say we were to look at something like this: energy recharge, attack plus 18, and elemental mastery 21. You'll notice also one more thing when it comes to artifacts is that they sometimes can come with a baseline of 4 stats for a 5-star artifact or 3. The same holds true for 4-star artifacts. They either come with 3 or they come with 2. With blue artifacts, they either come with 1 or they come with 2. So on and so forth. I believe the greens always come with 1 only, or sometimes they don't come with 1 at all. And then the 1-stars don't come with any substats whatsoever. Every 4 levels upon enhancing an artifact, you receive another bonus stat. So I'm going to go ahead and use this for example. There's also a chance, how convenient, that whenever you enhance an artifact, you can get a bonus enhancement. So you can either get 2 times experience, I also believe that you can get 3 times, and 5 times. So if you ever get this, consider yourself lucky. Unfortunately, because I was using only 1-star artifacts, I didn't get too much out of this, but if I was using a bunch of 4 stars, I would get much more mileage out of an enhancement bonus. Let's continue. Alright, so as you see here, from level 3 to level 4, and of course every multiple of 4, so 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, you get a new bonus attribute. And that comes at random. Oh my, what the? Oh, okay. Wow, that's pretty good. That's also a high roll, I believe. Yeah, that's actually the highest roll. You can get anywhere from 5.4% to 7.8%. I should also mention that these stats do come at a range. For example, the starting crit damage for one other artifact could be lower than another. Or I'm trying to find it here. Okay, let's look at this for example. Elemental Mastery plus 19 or Elemental Mastery plus 16. So if you're looking for a table as to what the high rolls are and the low rolls are, they will also be in links in the video description. The wiki page is wonderful, by the way. Genshin Impact's wiki is really fleshed with a lot of information, so that's your #1 go-to whenever you need to figure something out. But that's a pretty good artifact right there. I might actually work on this. It's based on how patient you are. If you are content with, let's say, getting a 5-star artifact with only 3 attributes, and if you think you can get a lucky roll with the 4th one, which I did here, then in that case this would be better than an artifact that has already 4, even though the one that has 4 substats at base gets 1 more increase. Because let me show you what happens when you have 4 attributes, or 4 substats, the most you can get on any artifact, and continue enhancing it. Alright, so if you already have 4 attributes or 4 substats, it will automatically upgrade one of those attributes. And this is where RNG comes on top of RNG, which comes on top of RNG, which is why you want to have, if possible, 4 out of 6 of the good substats, because if you have, let's say, for example, let's look at this one, attack, defense, and attack, there's a chance that it will upgrade defense, which is not what you want. You would want it to upgrade the good stats. But if you have all good stats, then it doesn't really matter. But in this case, I have a preference and I would like it to upgrade either flat attack or crit damage. Percent attack would have been nicer for a bonus, but this is still pretty good. So let's hope we get either crit damage or attack. Oh my god. What the? Apparently guide videos make me lucky. So as you can see there, it amplified crit damage by a massive amount. Now I don't know exactly how much it upgrades. I'm pretty sure if I were to look up a wiki page for it, it would tell me. But I'm guessing that it just increases based on the range. So because my crit damage before was 7.8%, it tacked on another 7.7%, which is pretty good. I got a high roll on top of a high roll. But as you can tell, enhancing artifacts is going to be a huge test of RNG, because not only is it RNG based on whether or not you get an artifact with good starting stats, but it's RNG whether or not you get good extra stats, especially if it's not a starting substat of 4. Like for this one, I believe I had only 2 attributes to it. But I got lucky and I got attack and I got crit damage. So it comes down to whether or not you think you can try your hand at an artifact that has 4 base stats at the start and to see if those 5 extra bonuses, because remember, a 5-star artifact goes up to 20, if those 5 bonuses will be very, very effective. However, there is nothing wrong with enhancing an artifact that comes with only 3. Because, again, it's RNG on top of RNG on top of RNG. Even if you do get a 5-star artifact with 4 base substats, and let's say all 4 substats are good, you could also get RNG screwed and it will upgrade the one that has the least impact on your character. But in this case, I got very lucky by getting not only an artifact with a good 4th substat, but it also upgraded that substat, which is extremely important. For the min-maxers out there, they're going to squeeze every single drop of mileage they can get out of anything in the game, right? But for the casual and somewhat hardcore player, not like super no-lifer hardcore player, they may not care about it too much. In this case, I am more than happy to accept this flower on someone like Kuching because crit damage. So because we're getting close to 40 minutes, I hope I can shave down a lot of rambling in the post-editing, but I think I don't know, just let me know if you think this video is going on too long. If I made you fall asleep, I apologize. I'll try to find more ways to entertain you. But this is meant to be a complete equipment guide, so I do not want to leave out anything. My goal is to make it so that this is the only video you'll ever need to watch when it comes to equipment and artifacts, but you're of course welcome to watch others. Do you want to spend artifacts on 3 stars and 4 stars? You are allowed to, but remember, it becomes increasingly more expensive to spend them on 5-star artifacts, and so you're going to need quite a bit. Also, if you remember, quests, chests, and all that stuff are very limited. There is a way that you can get artifacts daily, aside from doing, let's say, spending your resin on domains and whatnot. So I will leave a link to the video on that in the video description down below. A lot of YouTubers have made videos about it, like a bunch of investigations or a bunch of places where if you open a chest or whatnot, you can get some 1-star, 2-star artifacts. That's a good way to get them. But the last thing I want to cover, because I'm trying to end this video now if possible, is whether or not you want to farm artifact domains. From my inventory, you can tell that I actually did spend a lot, and a lot of people are going to be like, wait, you should wait until AR45 to farm artifacts. It depends, because when you reach AR45, even though you can start getting 5-star artifacts at AR40, for Midsummer Courtyard 5, the chances of getting a 5-star artifact is 30%, 20 to 30%, that's what most people are saying. But at 6, it becomes 100%. And for free-to-play players, resin is a very, very scarce resource. Now, I do spend a little bit of Primo Gems here and there. I usually just get the 50 Primo Gem enhancement. Free-to-play players, it's better to save your resin, especially your fragile resin if you have a whole bunch. Save them until AR45. If you have the self-restraint to do so. It'll take a long time to get to AR45, especially if you don't grind like, 5, 6, 7 hours a day. But it will be worth your while because, again, every time you go into that domain, you are guaranteed at least 1 5-star artifact. You can even get 2. Another place to get artifacts are from elite bosses, and you'll be getting these anyway because you have to farm the enhancement and ascension materials for your characters. And the bosses will be dropping the Gladiator set and the Wanderer set. The domains drop artifacts for specific elements. For example, in the Stone Forest, you get artifact sets that are based on the Geo affinity. If you go to the Hidden Palace, you will get artifacts based on Pyro. If you go to Midsummer Courtyard, you will get artifacts based on Electro. So long story short, if you want to be as efficient as possible, especially free-to-play players because you don't have as much concession when it comes to making mistakes or using resources, especially very valuable resources, I would save my fragile resin and Primo Gems to refresh if you feel like it for AR45. You're allowed to maybe dabble a little bit in AR40, but I would primarily focus on spending your resin to, let's say, farm Mora or to do other dungeons like Ascension dungeons or elite bosses and stuff like that. 2 bosses though that will give you an early access to 5-star artifacts are Lupus Boreas and Storm Terror. These 2 bosses can yield you the same set as the elite bosses, the Gladiator set and the Wanderer set. Not to mention a whole bunch of other stuff. And these start dropping, I believe, as early as AR30. You're allowed to do these once per week, so you have no reason not to do them. So if you haven't been doing these bosses, you should get started on them right away because every week you don't do them is a week that you'll never be able to get them again. Okay, I think that's it for the video. I want to continue talking about this, but again would be here for an hour, and this video is already reaching 44 minutes in pre-production. So I hope you guys are okay with me leaving things here. If you have any questions, by all means, feel free to ask me in the comment section down below. I know that this is a pretty dense amount of material, and I'm sure a lot of you guys may be confused by certain things, but I hope I did a good job explaining everything to the best of my ability. Once again, the reason why I made this video as long as I did is because I wanted to make sure that not only do I help you get acquainted with this system, but I also want to help make sure that you know the system enough to where whenever a new character comes out, whenever a new artifact comes out, or a new weapon comes out, you can figure stuff out on your own. Because the problem that I think a lot of players have, especially for video games, is that they become too reliant on guides, on resources. And that sounds kind of ironic given that I'm a channel that does mostly guide videos, but my goal is for you to be able to figure this stuff out on your own, so that way you can not only be more secure in your decisions for certain things, but so that you can also keep pace with people who are doing this stuff too. Because while it's important to reference guides and materials, you should also be able to draw conclusions for yourself. And that's the philosophy that I have with all my guide videos. I would love for you to continue watching my videos, but ultimately, it would make me happier if people who watch my videos develop the knowledge and I guess the problem solving to figure stuff out by themselves, so that they no longer have to rely on waiting for a guide to come out and they can just get straight to the grindstone right away whenever something new comes out. Anyways guys, if you'd like to support the channel, best way you can do so is leave a like, comment, share this video with your friends, subscribe to the channel for future uploads, and join my Discord server if you want to ask questions there, or if you want to hang out with other players. We have quite a few members who are also AR40 and above, so that they can help you out with hopefully some good information. Aside from that, follow me on Twitch as well as YouTube. I do live streaming on both if you want to check out my streams. I don't stream that much, but whenever I do, I hope you can attend. But for now, that's going to be it. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon for the next video. Take care.